I'm Samantha Wigand, and I am with United Way Worldwide. I get to be your moderator for the next hour and a half as you hear from our presenters. Our presenters are Joanna Hornik, who is the Deputy Director with Everyone Graduates at Johns Hopkins. We also have Ben Martinez, who's the National Program Director with Breakthrough Collaborative. And then finally, Carol Meyers, who is a consultant with the Indiana State Park in the Indiana Partnership Center. I myself am very excited to be part of this webinar. I've been working from United Way Worldwide on a very related project over the past year with my friends at Harvard Family Research Project. We've been working with a variety of communities, and I think some of them are actually on this call today, so hello to you all, around the country to develop and then implement a really comprehensive and evidence-based plan for each of their communities that will engage and support their families in helping children succeed in school and ultimately graduate from high school. So our focus has really been on kids in those young high school years. What our sites discovered in their planning process is that ninth grade is a critical year for students, which I know a lot of you all know. We know that at a national level, we see immense dropout rates in the ninth grade year. And the local data of our sites really confirm this to be true in their own communities as well. So given that, our sites knew that they had to work with their families well in and before the start of ninth grade. And they had to talk with families and students to understand what was happening and what would be useful intervention-wise for families. In every case, what they found, I think I went too fast, is that parents want to but don't know how to support their students as they get older. Their children are struggling to get more independence from mom and dad. These are the years where they don't want mom and dad anywhere near the school building. Schoolwork is becoming increasingly complex at the very same time, and information from the schools is coming less often, and when it does come, it's more difficult to understand. So what our sites also found, though, is that the solutions are pretty doable. If we can go to the next slide. Thanks. So here are a couple of things that you see up. There are three major kinds of solutions that our sites found. One is to please find ways to communicate with families. And added to that, the more personal and timely the communications can be, the better. So texting is great. Email is great, depending on the family. Some families communicate in different ways and have different preferences. Some prefer phone calls. And then a lot of our communities also found that putting in place parent liaisons to work directly between the school and parents was a real added bonus where schools could afford to do that. The other solution they found, communicate before there is a problem. So parents want to know what's going on during the school day. They want to know what their students are supposed to be learning. And they really want some tips on how they can support their kids at home. Because as I said before, going to the school building is not okay with their kids anymore. Finally, the third major group of solutions our communities found was to provide for opportunities for families to learn what the high school or graduation requirements are, what college entrance requirements are, how and where to monitor their child's progress on these requirements, and how to support their children in a way that respected their growing independence. So our communities did a variety of different things. They did summer orientation sessions for incoming freshmen, not only the freshmen, though, but also the families of those freshmen. They have been doing workshops on graduation requirements, college entrance exams or requirements, etc. Some of our sites also were able to find different innovative ways to make computer kiosks accessible to families so that families could go to their local library or right into the school building and be able to look up their students' data. And then finally, as I mentioned before, several of our sites really found that putting in place parent liaisons to build relationships with families has been golden and has really increased the ability of parents, and particularly parents who have been more disengaged, and often the parents of kids who are most at risk. Having the parent liaison in place really was pivotal in getting those families able to help their kids and their students. So for me, as I said, that's a quick summary of why I really care about this webinar today, and I hope that you all will gain a lot from it. I am going to pass the baton over to our first presenter, who is Joanna Hornik Fox. As I mentioned, that she's the Deputy Director from Everyone Graduates at Johns Hopkins. At Everyone Graduates, Joanna is responsible for capacity building efforts with those states and with local districts. She's engaged in strategizing national policy work and supporting research to advance national and local efforts to improve high school graduation rates, as well as college and career readiness. So she is a great presenter for us to have today. And with that, I turn it to you, Joanna.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks very much. I'm going to start us out with a slide that shows the problem that has us all concerned when we get to high school. And that is that in many high schools, we've got far fewer 12th graders than 9th graders. Now, this slide isn't quite accurate because it doesn't come to a narrow point. As you know, it's more of a wider at the top. But when you look, and this is something everybody can do in their own district, take that very rough average of how many 12th graders do you have, how many 9th graders do you have. That gives you a sense of the challenge in your school right there. We're not doing fancy statistics, looking at who's going in and who's going out, but that is the overview. And, of course, what we want to do is to make that triangle, as it were, a pyramid, into a square at every school. We want the same number of 9th graders as graduating as 12th graders. Now, I showed you this map for one reason, and that is basically to tell you that we're all in this together. People sometimes feel that, fingers are pointed at them or their schools or their district. And the fact of the matter is we have a national graduation crisis. Right now, only about 75% of our kids are graduating every year from high school, and it's far more challenging for African American and Hispanic students. The little black dots on this map and the red spots show you where the concentrations of non-graduating students are right now. And you can see it pretty much tracks the big cities, it tracks the rural South and urban South. It tracks all the disadvantaged communities we have, but they're all things that can get better. This next slide is a very positive slide that I wanted to show you, because what we know is that in the last 6 years, graduation rates have been improving. They were around 72% 6 years ago. They're now close to 75%. And in some states, these 10 that are listed here, there really has been quite remarkable progress. Tennessee, in fact, is a state that overall has raised its graduation rate from around 61 to 70-some%. That stands out for all of us. What we're showing you here is what we call them dropout factories, which is a terrible word. We should call them weak promoting power schools. These are schools in which the 12th grade is very much smaller than the 9th grade by about, or at least 40%. But what you can see, if you look carefully at these numbers, is that in 7 years, 2002 to 2009, we've seen great reductions in the absolute number of these schools in Texas, in South Carolina, in Tennessee, Alabama, Illinois. You can go down the list: Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Kentucky, and North Carolina. So that's the really good news, that when we all get together, or as in those states, they get together in their state and make decisions about what they're going to do, success can happen. And I think at the back of our minds, this is why we keep track of data, not to point the fingers to say something bad is going on, but to be able to say, what we're doing is right. How can we do it even better than we're currently doing? I brought you this slide to show you something else. This is a slide of one national group of students, the group of students who across the U.S. graduated in 2006. And it looks at the number of students that were in that cohort starting in first grade in 94, 95. What you can see is that in the blue years, those are elementary school years, you have some fluctuations in enrollment, but essentially all the students are staying in school. As you get to middle school, and those are the light yellow students, you start seeing little increases in that number. And you know what that means is that maybe more students are being retained in those years. They've hit middle school, they can't read very well, perhaps, and they're starting to struggle, or they're starting to show us signs that they're struggling. They may have started that long ago. When they get to ninth grade, that's that big bump, the red magenta color. That's where we start seeing the real troubles that Samantha referred to. And this is on the national scale, and it's true in almost every district. Students get to high school. Some of them had troubles previously. Some have troubles once they get into ninth grade. They were good students before, but the whole high school environment challenges them. For one reason or another, they stay in ninth grade. They don't get enough credits to move on to 10th. Some of them, usually or often in the most challenged schools, that's around 30% of the students, don't get to move up. And so they stay in ninth grade. And the students, additionally, some of them don't graduate or don't get promoted out after 2 years. And so that ninth grade gets to be a very large number of students with very different needs to which we need to, target quite different solutions. Then, once students reach the legal school leaving age in your state, and that varies, we advocate, certainly from Hopkins here, that people look at raising the graduation rate age to 18 if that's not already in your district or state, because that's a powerful incentive for students to keep in school. If they can leave at 16, they will repeat ninth grade twice and then they'll leave. And as you can see, nationally, the enrollment in 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade starts dropping pretty dramatically. That's how you get to a 75% national graduation rate from the 100% that started out. And then the last two is something that you can also look at in your own data. It is the number of students who are in 12th grade compared with the number who get diplomas at the end of the year. Some states and districts where it doesn't really, or isn't counted, how many credits you need to graduate or to be promoted, from year to year, students can arrive in 12th grade with few credits, and they simply cannot get their diploma. Others, where there are requirements for promotion, there are fewer who don't get their diploma. I also bring you this slide because these kinds of things, these are rough and dirty ways to look at what is the challenge in your own community. You can do this for every school in your district and for your district. Just make a graph of what the enrollment is for one class and then follow the students as they go higher and higher in the grades. And you'll get a picture of what's up in your community. Now, we have to ask, why are kids dropping out? And is it a 1-year process, 2-year process, or is it long-term? So take a minute, just look at this slide. We can't do this interactively. But as you look at all those factors on the screen, make your own commitment about what you think is or are the various reasons that students drop out. And I'll just share with you that 10 years ago, many of us focused on the issues in the bottom right-hand quarter. Gender, boys did worse than girls. Socioeconomic status, people who were less affluent did worse than people who were more affluent. Parent education, children of parents who hadn't been to high school or to college did worse than those who had. And of course, those are all things that we cannot control in our community or our schools. And so as we look at this from our vantage point, we don't discount those, but we focus instead on the factors that we know that adults in the community have some influence over. That's attendance, that's course failure, that's behavior, that's test scores. We can influence all of that. Very up close, we choose 3 indicators that are the ones that we can most easily influence, and those are attendance, behavior, and course performance. We call them the ABCs. Why is it important? There's an awful lot of data, and it comes from Baltimore, it comes from Chicago, it comes from Philadelphia, it comes from most of the major cities now, that show that the fewer days students come to school, the more likely they are to drop out. And this begins very early. This was a study of Baltimore 6th graders, or the cohort that started in 1990 in 6th grade and then moved on. And basically, once students are absent over 20 days, they start failing to graduate. If you want to take that quickly. If you look at the students who had a suspension or more, very few of them were on-time graduates. And this is 6th grade. And remember in that longitudinal graph I showed you of those colored horizontal bars, students' enrollment in 6th grade was pretty good. But under the surface, things are going on. And that's what we need to start paying attention to. Nearly 81% of the students who had a suspension in 6th grade in Philadelphia didn't graduate on time 6 years later. Pretty shocking information. But of course, we can do something about it, right? When students are in 6th grade, we have 6 years at which to bring interventions to play. Here's another startling slide. It's one I always remember. It's from Chicago, and it shows the 4-year graduation rates by freshman absence rates. And I always like to use it because it's so stark. It doesn't really matter in a sense. What we see on the left is that students who come on to school almost all the time, who miss only 4 days a year, have an 87% chance of graduation. Students who come to school or they miss 5 to 9 days a year, they have a 63% chance of graduation. That is a 24% drop from the ones who came to school almost every day. And so it goes. By the time you've missed 14 days of school, you're down to a 41% chance of likelihood of graduating. 15 to 19 days, it's 21%. And when this kind of study has been replicated in many cities by now in some states, and sometimes the exact number of days, the cutoffs are different in each state because everybody keeps data differently. But you see the same general trend. And 20% 20 days is generally agreed upon as the cutoff. After that, there's a very low chance of graduation. Before that, it's better and it climbs. So, having looked at these dire facts, all of which you can collect on your own, let me go back to one slide which I missed. I'm sorry. We often think about the students who are really in bad shape, the ones who fail math or English in 6th grade, who fail math or English in 9th grade, who miss 20 or more days, and who have a bad behavior mark. And it may be a suspension, but it can also be the kind of marks that you find in teachers' grade books. Johnny can't sit still. Johnny never pays attention. Johnny's always a troublemaker. Those kinds of marks give a very high prediction that a student won't graduate. But, and this data is something from Chicago, it's a consortium on school research at the University of Chicago. It always interests me because a lot of us think, well, the students are getting C's and D's. We don't pay that much attention to them. And yet what the Chicago research shows is that the ones who are getting less than a C minus have just as good a chance of not graduating as they do of graduating. And when we think of what we can do in a whole school, comprehensive school reform, comprehensive school improvement, improving school climate, those are many of the students who will be influencing. The ones in the middle who are just getting by. When we talk about family engagement policies, we want to be focusing on the families of those students as well. How can we set higher standards that say, folks, it's really time for everybody to get to school? And that's, given what we know about all of this, what can we do? And what is family? What is the role of the family in helping us? This is some work from the National Family School and Community Engagement Working Group. And they're looking at how do we think about how we used to look at things as opposed to how we need to be looking at them now to get more people engaged, more families engaged. We used to think it was individual. You know, that family, they just can't get their kids to school on time. Now we know that it's something that the district, the school, the community, and the family need to be working together on. We used to think, oh, I just can't get through to that mom. Now we need to think, how can I get through to that mom? In the past, we think, well, I called her, I called him. Did it work? Now we have to think of an overall plan that meets our community's needs. And different communities have quite different ones. And there are different accepted ways, as Sam referred to, of communicating with families in different communities. We used to think, well, this isn't the central mission of the school. Our job is to teach. But now we know that in addition to that, everybody's taken on new roles in this community. We have to integrate attendance behavior and course passing culture into our entire school, district, community. We've got to get everybody on board. Then we come to what's driving this? Is it that suddenly we realize 30% of our kids aren't in school on any given day, or 20%? Or is it we realize we want 98% attendance? We want it every day. We don't want attendance to fall off just before a holiday. We don't want attendance to drop off when the weather gets warm. We want it to be, excuse me, I hit my keyboard here. We want it to be just a natural part of our thinking. Compliance. Well, some states and districts still have rules that send out truant officers to go get people, take them to the juvenile court. That's compliance-driven thinking, and it has its place. But we want to know that long before that, we've all stepped in to do something. That's what taking ownership of the challenge is all about. Similarly, a one-time project. We can't just have a big effort to get everybody on board. Attendance is great, let's do it. This time we're going to do walks through the community and roust out students who are at home on their couch and bring them to school. We have to do it every day of every year. Continuing on the same theme, we're looking at what is the district role? And the question before us is, in a sense, can a school do everything? And I think many people have come to the conclusion in this day and age that no, schools can't do everything on their own. Teachers' job is still to teach. How can everybody else help them by getting the kids into school on time and creating that culture that says this is what students are expected to do? Districts can very much help in setting that tone because they are the location, really, of the people who can most effectively reach out and bring in community organizations. You know, if there's a need to start having vaccinations at school, instead of sending each child off one by one to miss a morning when they get a vaccination at their doctor's office or a clinic, the district can arrange for health agencies to come into schools. The district is probably better suited than many schools are acting on their own to bring in providers of different services. Second, plan it systematically and systemically. I was in a district in South Carolina not long ago, and the district had arranged literacy buses that went out to community centers that were near where the parents lived, and they had reading groups in them. And I met a parent coordinator at a school who made tremendous use of that and assigned books to the parents she had and assigned books to her kids so that parents and students were reading on the same topic, even though they were reading slightly different books. She probably would not have been able to arrange those buses on her own, but once the district had arranged them, she could take advantage of that. Then we ask, how do we drive this? You can put family engagement as a requirement into school improvement plans. Schools have to figure out what they want to do. Same with districts. And we bring in community organizations. Last of all, we lay the foundation for understanding the issue. What is going on in your community? Making telephone calls home isn't that helpful if the person you're trying to get to school is a 14-year-old who has to take care of a 3-year-old because her parents are off working. She can't do very much about that. So know the family. Know your community. Do what's easy. If you know some things are simple, do them first. Get that out of the way. Hold events. Teach parents how important it is. And do understand what's going on in each of your families. Last of all, we'll take one quick look. We've talked a lot about what isn't going on in high schools and what needs to change. We've got a whole other bump ahead of us, which is getting people into college well prepared. And what that means is that after we've done all the other things we've talked about, we look at what are students learning. How are they learning it? And so forth. And if you'd like to read more about this, I've taken over my time. Here are some reports that you can check in on. And I thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so much, Joanna. I wanted to mention earlier in this webinar and failed to that we were going to be taking questions throughout each presentation so that we could stop and take a few minutes after each presenter to answer a few questions from you all in the audience. Thankfully, we have a very intelligent audience that already figured this out, so we already have questions here. So let's start with, is there any measurement of youth that are dropping out between 8th and 9th grade? And I think you had mentioned sort of doing a time trend study. Is there anything else that you could mention, Joanna?
On youth who are dropping out between 8th and 9th?
Mm-hmm. Is there a measurement? In most places, students don't drop out between 8th and 9th unless they have become very much older, over age in middle school. Mm-hmm. But one would look at the same issues of, what are their records, and certainly look at their ages in that case. Right, and tracking the cohort year over year, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. I have another question. It's going to take a second for me to answer the question. It's sort of lengthy, but I think a good one. What accounts for the apparent increase in students in 9th grade compared to the middle years? And more specifically, is it that one reason, in addition to what you cited, is that students are suddenly enrolling at the 9th grade level that formerly were in private schools or in small charter schools or being homeschooled? I think one would have to look at that city by city. In general, the percentage of students in charter schools is on average 5% across the country. So one would not see a big effect on that from that. There are cities, the District of Columbia is the most obvious, where 40% of the students are in charter schools. One could certainly look at that point. But that's going to be primarily a community-specific question. That if you have a lot of schools in those categories, then it would be possible it has an influence. Homeschooling is typically 1 to 3%.
So again, it wouldn't account for the 30% jump in enrollment that you see.
Thank you. And we have another question. What kinds of interventions have you seen that have worked with high-risk sixth graders, which you really honed in on, to help them reach high school without those same risk factors that they had in middle school? How do you help those sixth graders turn the corner?
Some of what you need to do is simply sustain support all the time. Some of it is making sure that everybody can read well. You know, it's about fourth grade, fifth grade that the content in books becomes much more complicated and reading skills get severely tested. So it may be that you need to really give students 2 or 3 blocks a day. This is something that Florida has done very successfully, is really work on early reading skills and middle grade reading skills. You begin to have the more challenging case a student presents, you have more and more one-on-one support. You may need a social worker to look into what are the family background issues that are challenging the student. Those you can't solve, but you can bring in resources to address from other agencies in your community. So that you have a graded series, we call it tiered interventions, somewhat the same way people in RTI and PBIS look at things. Who needs the most help? Get that one-on-one. Who needs intermediate levels of help? And that may be academic and curricular. That might be in a small group or a class. And what can you do school-wide?
Thank you. And you and I are getting a little nudge if we could speak a little louder.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Another question from the audience. Have you examined school-family-community partnership effects on dropout where there are year-round academic calendar years?
I don't think we've done any studies on that, and that is a very good question. Prompted another study for us.
Okay, there we go. Another question. We all know that transient students have many issues. And systemically keeping in touch is difficult because the location and people involved keep changing. Any advice? Any words of wisdom?
Well, I think although we all get a little nervous about student identifiers and all the things that are coming upon us with the changes in data systems, that will help a great deal because we will now, beginning next year, 48 out of the 50 states have committed to having not only individual student identifiers, but really using them to track students. Once you can do that, and if you can do that through the state, you can see where kids are going much more quickly than you can when you are transferring paper records back and forth. That's the short answer. The other one is look at your intake procedures in schools. And when a student shows up at the front desk with their parent to say, I want to enroll, what is the response right then? How are they oriented to the school? How are they made to feel part of it?
Absolutely. Great. Thank you. We have one last question. What would you suggest for addressing ninth graders early on in the onset of high school? I guess this assumes that you can't reach back to middle school. So
right.
How do we start where they are in ninth grade?
I think we have to share with them the fact that high school is different from middle school. Everything counts. Credits count. Most middle schools, you don't get credits, and you don't have that idea that you've got to master a certain number of credits in order to graduate. That's a big idea for ninth graders. The second is you've got to help them understand that what seems like freedom is not complete freedom. They need to start taking responsibility for themselves. Nobody's going to walk them down to the lunchroom anymore, but they've got to do it themselves. And so it's that whole shift, and I think you mentioned this earlier, in who's responsible, and it's becoming me, or I am responsible, is the thing the ninth grader has to start to realize. We usually, in the schools that we work with closely, advise on keeping ninth graders separated from the older students in the ninth grade academy, where we also focus on helping the students build relationships with each other and with their teachers, and getting them extra help in math and English when they need it and aren't yet at grade level. So there's a group of things. Some of them are expectations, some are organizational, and some are curricular that are necessary to get them off on a good foot.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you so much, Joanna. It was a great presentation. And we are now going to turn over to Ben Martinez for yet another great presentation. Ben, as I mentioned earlier, is the National Program Director with Breakthrough Collaborative. He started with Breakthrough in the mid-'90s as a teacher, and so he was a real on-the-ground person. He knows what it's like firsthand and is enjoying his return to Breakthrough now as the National Program Director. In the interim, Ben served as a teacher and a counselor for similar programs such as Upward Bound in L.A. and Prep for Prep in New York City. And so, Ben, we look forward to hearing from you. Take it away.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here. Breakthrough is a dual mission organization. We were founded in 1978 in San Francisco, and we've served tens of thousands of students in over 27 cities over the years. Our unique dual mission is, one, to increase the academic opportunity for highly motivated, underserved students and put them on a trajectory of a successful college path, and two, inspire and develop the next generation of teachers and educational leaders. For the purposes of today's presentation, I'm going to be speaking to the first half of our mission, which is to get students on the path to four-year colleges. So we tend to start with data, and Joanna already shared with us a lot of the harrowing statistics and data around the achievement gap. Children in low-income communities are 2 to 3 grades behind their wealthier peers by 4th grade. It only gets worse as they progress to high school. But though 65% of African American and Hispanic students in low-income communities earning a high school diploma. And the costs are really significant, with only 1 in 10 students from low-income communities graduating from college. The economic costs to the U.S. are around $500 billion annually. And one of the things that sticks with us is that the highest-performing low-income students graduate from college at about the same rate as the lowest-performing high-income students, and that's just frustrating. I could go on and on, of course, with statistics that are really just downright scary. But at Breakthrough, we focus on a specific niche of the achievement gap, which is the students who are underserved as defined by being from backgrounds where they're low income, they'll be the first in their families to go to college, they're students of color, or have other factors that data shows limit their college enrollments. But our students are relatively high-performing and motivated when they enter our program. And there's a widespread assumption that our students will succeed in middle school and high school and college because they're performing so well in elementary school. And unfortunately, research shows that simply isn't true. Students like ours, despite doing so well in 5th and 6th grade, really start to fall off the high performance tracks at alarming rates and for a number of reasons. And the greatest changes tend to happen around the transition to high school and 9th grade performance. So our work focuses on really a lot of information sharing, high school selection, high school course planning, and general just preparing for high school in an effort to prepare adequately for college readiness. And when we talk about college readiness, we're talking about four-year college readiness. And our work focuses really consistently on supporting students, but also supporting families, because we feel like we have to be in this together or none of us are going to succeed. This is a quick look at our Breakthrough student profile. So because we're in 27 different cities, the makeup of the student populations differs a little bit by cities, but this is a general snapshot. And we have been increasing the percentage of those who will be the first in their family to attend college because data just show that students who attend college and are the first ones in their families tend to end the poverty line and their family lines forever. So I want to go into the middle school program a little bit before I jump into the transitions that we do when they're going into high school. We recruit students during their 6th grade year, and they start the summer between 6th and 7th grade. And we start with them in recruitment at 6th grade because we believe that by 9th grade, they have to be on a college track, and they have to be ready to take rigorous courses in high school in order for a four-year college enrollment to actually be a possibility for their future. So to do this, we do intensive 6-week summer sessions in the summers following 6th and 7th grades. And we have a students teaching students model, which I mentioned, which has high school and college age students serving as our teachers with very small class sizes, so it's extremely high touch, both for our summer programs and our school year programs during the middle school years. We focus heavily on accelerated learning in English, math, science, social studies, and foreign language. We also push heavily academic electives such as African American history, debate, astronomy, and a number of others. And we do enrichment electives such as athletics, music lessons, study skills, public speaking, and these vary through the different communities where we exist. The programs are extremely intensive. We're trying to get kids to be prepared to enter a top-level high school, and so they do 2 to 3 hours of nightly homework over the summer. We do educational field trips, and we do family outreach events on a regular basis. When they are in their school years, and when they're at the regular hosted schools, they attend individualized after-school academic tutoring. We focus a lot on skill building in math and writing and do a lot of individual family high school options counseling. And we put a great emphasis on the individual family high school options counseling because we believe that if we're not enrolling our students in truly rigorous college preparatory high school programs, then we're not setting them up for success. For some of our students, this could mean enrolling in a top private school, and that's great. We support that. But for most of our students, 92% of them to be exact, they enroll in public schools, but they still have to wade through the options of public schools. You know, our students need to be in high schools where the curricula is rigorous and the peer culture is really working toward four-year college enrollment. So helping families understand what that is and navigate their options is really critical to help them succeed. For our high school program, we do support our students during the high school years, especially in the 9th grade year. But we also believe that if we do a good job of enrolling them in top-level high schools, a lot of the supports we expect our students to receive in high school would be readily available by the school where they're attending, and they would be able to get those supports. They'd be available and provided to the students. The supports we really are looking at are tutoring. Our students in 9th grade often, when they're going into a top-level high school, don't realize how much harder the work is going to be than the middle school where they were attending. So they sometimes need tutoring, and we want to make sure they get that quickly. We do grade monitoring. We help them just stay on the college prep track and understand what that is. We do test preparation and admissions counseling, campus tours, everything that we feel like a school should provide if it's a top level, but we want to ensure that it actually happens. We believe that the schools that the students attend can provide this. However, not every school does, or not every school does it at a high quality. So we also believe in partnerships. We're a big proponent of building partnerships with other local organizations in the local communities who can provide this. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. So if another organization is doing this very well, we just want to keep them doing it and having them run it smoothly. And when the school's not doing this adequately and we can't find a partner organization, this is when Breakthrough steps in and ensures that students get these supports. So the success factors that we believe and research shows that really are impacting students on their path to college are, one, a belief in the need for college. Students who believe they need a bachelor's degree to pursue the career of their choice are 46% more likely to obtain a bachelor's degree. A peer group. Students are 4 times more likely to enroll in college if a majority of their friends also plan to attend. And then the rigor of high school coursework, and this one can't be overstated. A rigorous high school curriculum has greater impact on bachelor's degree completion than any other pre-college indicator of academic preparation, regardless of socioeconomic status or race. So let me talk a little bit about how Breakthrough addresses each of these factors. First, with the belief in the need for college. From the very start of recruiting students for our programs, we stress that the goal of our program is enrollment at a 4-year college. We talk about the need for college from day one so that it's really clear what we're working toward. And we also have a very rigorous application process for students and their families, which includes interviews and reference checks, and we look at their grades and test scores. We really want to set up the expectation from day one that this is going to be tough work, but we can do it, but we all have to be in this together. And we talk on and on and on about the end goal being four-year college. And everything is working backwards. So what you're going to do in high school is based on that. What you're going to work on in middle school to prepare for high school is based on that. With the second factor around college-going peer group, as I mentioned, all teaching during the middle school program is performed by high school and college-age teachers to create a transformational relationship and learning environment. We really believe that it's cool to be smart, and we want to make that felt comfortable to everyone. And people often will question or wonder whether having students serve as our teachers can really work. You know, they'll say, sure, it's fun, but does it actually lead to better outcomes? And actually it does. You know, we've had a lot of great studies done to show that this does work. And it's great because the high school and college age teachers are really tough on the middle school students because they remember themselves vividly what middle school was like and how doing well and not doing well helped them when they started their high school careers. Oops. And then third, the rigorous breakthrough curriculum. Again, we do 2-year, year-round middle school programming, including the intensive 6-week summer sessions, after school and weekend tutoring during the school years. And we're constantly pushing them to do more and to try bigger challenges. We also do high school course planners that help students and families understand the requirements to access college. And then we stay with them through high school to make sure they're staying on the right track. So the reason we do this is because there are a lot of options when coming to high school, and we never want families or students to think that they need to just go to the neighborhood school because that's where everyone goes. They have a lot of options in front of them, whether they're private or public. And as I mentioned, most of them go to public schools. So we need to help our families and our students navigate the application procedures, if there are any deadlines, if there are any, and understand the curriculum offerings at the schools. You know, in a smaller community where there aren't a ton of options, this still requires a lot of work. To be intentional with student enrollment and planning out a high school course of study over 4 years requires a lot of time and communication. And in dense urban communities, I mean, the options alone can make you want to faint. But clearly, we believe that this is worth the investment because you have to know what you're trying to get through in order to do it successfully. And so how do we figure that out with our families and students? We ask all of our directors in our local breakthrough programs to research the schools in their communities and understand how many kids graduate from the school, how many have AP course offerings, how many are accepted to college, how many enroll in college. So we share this kind of information during our high school options counseling, which takes place, it starts when we first get the students, and it happens over the 7th grade year, and it happens very intensively over the 8th grade year. And we try to share with them what a college prep curriculum looks like. One study that we report on a lot says that 52% of low-income students expect to go to college, but only 23% of the 8th graders expect to pursue a college prep curriculum. Well, to pursue a college prep curriculum, you have to know what it is. So that basic information sharing is really key in our work, and we're constantly reminding students and families of what it is required of them if they want to have a 4-year college option in the future. So with that information, Breakthrough has results in which 79% of our students are going on to college prep high school programs, and we say programs because there may be a large comprehensive high school that's really not college prep, but there is a smaller magnet program or a school within a school that is college prep within it. So we talk about the high school program a lot. We also have 3 times as many of our students going on to 4-year colleges as a national average for our demographics, but it's simply not good enough. We feel like we need to get better, and there's constant work to be doing. As I mentioned, we stay with students during the high school years. We really want them to remain committed to the goal of attending a 4-year college. We want them to maintain a B average. They have to submit transcripts to us and be in contact with us when they are struggling so that we can get them support as quickly as possible. And we want them to just keep us in the loop so that we're a partner in their success. And we commit to them to providing supports when they need it and helping them through changing courses if they need to, on advocating on their behalf, on supporting them in the college application process. So some of the key lessons that we really think about, one for educators, is to be a source of information for students and families. You have to let them know what's out there and demystify the myths about the schools or the procedures or the costs. You have to just be an information provider, and you have to provide it in various different mediums and do it all the time. Second, you have to teach parents not to be intimidated by school leadership. A lot of our families feel that way, but they don't have the luxury to feel that way. Parents at independent schools expect the best for their children, and they are successful advocates for their children. Our public school parents have to be the same way, so we have to teach them what that means. And then we have to cut through the smog of low expectations. We take that language from Teach for America's Teaching as Leadership book. It's really easy to lower expectations for students when things are going hard. It's really too easy to give our students a pass because of the backgrounds they have, but that doesn't do anyone any good. Our students need to be challenged. They need to be expected to achieve. So that's a huge part of our culture as well. And then lastly, key lessons for families is, one, recognize the influential peer culture. It becomes more and more important in middle school and high school. So you have to monitor friendships and encourage connections with peers who plan to attend college. You have to make college a tangible part of your child's world by visiting a college campus together. It's amazing how much more impactful a visit to a college is if a parent goes with the child than if they just talk about it. And lastly, don't be intimidated by costs. You know, the costs of a college are staggering and frightening, but they can be overcome. Financial aid is available. A lot of students who are low income don't apply for aid because they're simply overwhelmed or scared by it. We have to make sure that they understand what's involved and what is available to them. So those are some of the key lessons that we've really learned. I again thank you for being here and for letting me share a little bit about Breakthrough. These are the cities where we exist. Our headquarters are in San Francisco. And we're also in Hong Kong, which the map doesn't show at the moment, but we're hoping to grow in more cities in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Ben. We have some questions, if you are willing to answer. The first question that I wanted to ask you is just sort of beginning, at the beginning with the kids. How do you all select the sixth graders who end up in the program?
Yeah, again, I mentioned that there is a rigorous application process. So they have to apply, they have to fill out essays, they have to submit grades and transcripts. Their families have to do an interview, the students have to do an interview. So it's really rigorous, and we are looking for students who need us, who, again, are first-generation to college students, who are low income, or have other risk factors, and who show a lot of motivation, who really want to be able to do the work and are willing to spend 2 to 3 nights a night of their summers doing homework.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so as far as working with the schools, how do you all collaborate with the schools so that they want to bring you all in to work with students and families, or is this more of a parallel program that happens independently of the schools?
Yeah, we try to work with the schools as much as humanly possible to be in connections with school principals, school leaders, school counselors, teachers. We want to be seen as a supplement to the great work that they are doing. So we know that a lot is going on at the school level, and we want schools to be able to recommend students to our program who could really benefit from an extra push that the schools may just not have the capacity to give them because they're overcrowded or they don't have the resources, but they know the students could do more if given the individual challenges. And we have the nice benefit of doing a lot of one-on-one work with students, and so we can push them in ways that the schools just may not have the capacity to do. But we try to have the schools see us as a partner and a supplement to what they are already doing.
Okay. Thank you. And how, you mentioned the students teaching students model that you all use. How do you determine which of your students are going to become teachers?
Yeah, that's a great question. We are always trying to get more and more of our students to turn into teachers in their later years in schooling, and we do certainly have about 20% of the students who do that. But we also do recruiting on college campuses and in high schools in the local communities to find other people who want to teach our students who are just young in their professional careers. So we do a lot of active recruitment of our teachers. And the students teaching students model, again, is just fascinating and magical for us because there is such intensive work going on in the summers and after school and weekend programming, but they're having such a good time that the kids somewhat forget that it's hard work because they like it and they want to be these older students. They want to be in the schools where the older students go. And again, that builds that peer culture of college going.
Got it. And then can you, this is a personal interest of mine as well, can you describe in more detail the family outreach activities that you all do throughout the summer and throughout the school year?
Yeah, again, a lot of it will focus on the high school options counseling, so we'll meet with them a few times so that they understand the options available in their community. And that they can start talking at home with their students about which schools might be the best ones for them. We share with them weekly how the students are doing in our program. If there are any concerns, we do phone calls. We have them come in for meetings. We do celebrations at the end of each summer so that the families feel that they're part of the program.
Great, thank you. And then one other question. Do you have any data on which components of breakthrough students find to be most useful?
We certainly have a ton of data, and I think it really goes back to the academic rigor. The more academically rigorous the high school program they have, the better the chances of getting into a four-year college and succeeding. So we work backward from that. The more rigorous we can provide for middle school work, the better they'll be ready for the high school work. And so that's where we focus a lot of our attention. There's a lot of great parts of the program, but the heart of it is in the academic preparation.
Got it. And so when you all ask students, they would often say that the same thing as well. It's the rigor.
Yeah, well, they'll say they love their teachers because they do love them. But yes, it's the academic rigor that's really the focus.
Right. And so what happens when you have students enrolled in the program and they're really bright students and they decide, you know what, a four-year college isn't really where I want to go. I really want to go into this specific trade. Or how does that work in Breakthrough?
Yeah, we try to share with them why a four-year college is so much more beneficial, showing the long-term prospects for career options and financial income. And really just helping them and their families understand that there are more options available with a four-year college degree, even though the immediacy of a trade school or another route might seem more appealing. But again, there's no rocket science to that. It's conversations, and it's talking with people and with the families, with the students, and doing it again and again, and letting them see people who are succeeding, who are like them, who have gone on to four-year colleges.
Ben, thank you so much for your presentation. We appreciate it. And now we're going to hear from Carol Meyers, who is a consultant with the Indiana State Park at the Indiana Partnership Center. Carol has been a consultant for the Partnership Center throughout the last 10 years, helping to design the initial Parent Leadership Academy and to modify the Academy this past year with a focus on college readiness and access. She's been the lead consultant in developing a 3-year partnership between the Indiana Partnership Center and the Indianapolis Public Schools that promotes creating school cultures and practices that engage families and school staff in supporting student graduation as well as post-secondary success. And so, Carol, we are looking forward to hearing from you.
Well, thanks, Sam. It's great to be here, and I appreciate hearing what the other presenters had to say because it really connects with the work that we've been involved in. I wanted to mention that our parent perk with the Partnership Center is we're an Indiana perk, and so we're a parent information and resource center. And so we entered into a partnership.
Thank you.
We entered into a partnership with the Indianapolis Public Schools 2.5 years ago, focused on college readiness and access. And the purpose of our partnership was to really increase the communication and engagement of middle school and high school families with college readiness and success. That was our primary purpose and the purpose of our organization. But because of the context that we were in, we realized we had significant work that needed to be done with the school staff to help them strengthen their focus on college readiness and access so that they could really include families in that process. So we grew our desired outcomes because of the circumstance that we were in. And so our additional priorities became to really increase the staff awareness of the challenges and best practices for college access and readiness, and how to engage parents in that process. We asked them to really develop a shared responsibility among their staff for impacting college readiness and access, because we found most of the schools that we worked with, the counselor was the person that was primarily responsible for college readiness work. And we also sought to increase staff awareness and utilization of existing resources that were taking place in the community. In the Indianapolis community at that time, and we started 3 years ago, we had a graduation rate of 46% of our students graduating and being ready to go on to college. The partnership, I thought it'd be helpful to share the context of our work, because we all have our own priorities, but we need to work within the context of our setting to really match those priorities with our schools and with our community. And so our context was that we had an established 10-year relationship with our school district focused on family engagement. This had happened informally with school principals and staff. We had done workshops. We had done leadership work with parent and school teams. And so we had a context of, we were kind of an in-out group within the district. The superintendent for the school district had recently mandated to have parent liaisons in all of the schools. And so every elementary through high school had a parent liaison. With the advent of the federal ARA grants, we were able to partner with the district to create a parent liaison certification program. And so that's what started 3 years ago. We had the opportunity to work with parent liaisons once a month for the last 2.5 years. At the same time, through the Lucent Foundation, our local foundation, the Central Indiana Community Foundation, received a grant from them to do college readiness and access work. And so we received a grant from them to support our work with the district. We were also fortunate that one of our principals that we had worked with at one of the high schools changed leadership and was very involved with the assistant superintendent for secondary schools. And so together, they set a priority with our Title I department to really have a focus on college readiness and access, and particularly parent engagement in that process. So we were in a position to really help build an initiative that would link our community partners with the parent liaisons and the principals within the district. I wanted to share the key components of the work that we then engaged in. Back this up a minute. Was that we were able to have ongoing communication and regular monthly connections with parent liaisons, where we did training with them and really became cheerleaders for them to take on this work of college readiness and to involve parents in that process. We created pathway teams at each middle school and high school that we were able to provide structured time for planning and cross-school collaboration over the last 2.5 years. We were able to provide professional development for the liaisons and the pathway teams, and a big element of the work was to establish systems of data gathering and analysis that we were able to help the schools with and provide them with as a focus of their college readiness and success work. We were able to work with the partnership with the Indiana Central Community Foundation to help drive some problem solving that was needed through this initiative, and then through that funding provide some real strong positive reinforcement and recognition to our schools for the progress that they would make. One of the things I wanted to make sure that our audience was aware of is the work of beating the odds in the research, and this was focused out of New York City with high schools who had incoming ninth graders who had high poverty rates and far below average reading and math scores, who came into high school but produced 4-year graduation rates and college attendance above the district average and well above other high schools. And This research identified 4 key factors, and several of those you have heard mentioned from our other presenters, having to do with academic rigor and having rigorous programs for all students in the high school, having a culture of college readiness, and we heard about that and the importance of having peers that college readiness and access is mattering to at school. Effectively using data in the school, not only for the teachers, but for parents and for students to have access to that. And then having a network of timely supports for students to really turn things around and for their families to be involved in that too. So that was a foundation of our work with the school district, was really understanding this research and moving forward with it. We started with the parent liaisons with that work, and we had them attend local colleges for these meetings. So they were able to be at the local college, find out about how you get admission to local colleges, and we even had a parent liaison begin entering college through that process. But they then had firsthand information that they could share with our parents. They all set up centers at their schools and had lots of information from the universities to help them with that. I wanted to share that as a part of this, in our first year with the work, that part of the work was really to expand the role of the parent liaisons to include college readiness. This wasn't on their radar screen, and we heard mention about parent liaisons earlier. But we really needed to work with them to give them the information and to help them own the responsibility of talking to their families about SAT prep and the courses that their kids need to take and what the requirements are and what the scholarships are that are available and looking into their child's data. And so this was done in a number of different ways. So it was really infusing their current job that they had with this new lens of what parents need to know and understand for their kids to succeed in high school and go on to college. We asked these parent liaisons to really be champions and to find other champions at their school to help them with this. And that's when we found out that we really needed to have a stronger support mechanism within each high school and middle school for college readiness. So out of that work, our assistant superintendent set forth college pathway teams that we would have those that would involve our parent liaisons, principals, counselors, teachers, and parents. And we began that work in a more systemic way within the schools. And like Phyllis was talking earlier, it was real important to go from random acts to focused work over time within our schools. The last thing we did in this first year was to implement college visits with families and students and really to embed that culture and to have families be at the table with their kids and bringing that home and then to the school. In our second year, we really began honing in on the work and the use of the Beating the Odds research within our pathway teams and getting this information from the schools. So we had our pathway teams doing a self-assessment at their school. There was a very powerful survey that we were able to distribute and have completed by over 3,000 students. But each school got information from their particular students about their experience at the school and what they were receiving and what else they might need. Each of the schools, we taught them how to do parent focus groups and student focus groups so that they could gain more direct information from the people closest to what they were trying to achieve. So some of the key findings that came from that, which I think really helped to drive the work within our schools, were that we had so many students complete the surveys. But was mentioned earlier by one of the other presenters. We had 70% of our students say that they knew of supports at their school, but only 30% of them had used these services. And so there was a definite gap there, and so we wanted our parents to be aware of those services. And also, relative to another comment made earlier, we had 91% of our kids said that they planned to go to college, but less than 75% of them that knew what it would take to do that. They were articulate about what they wanted, but we found some real gaps for them. So this really led to our work in the summer and then into a third year with our schools. We had a summer institute where the schools looked at this information. We had parents attend the institute, parent liaisons. We had best practices, examples come from other places. And each of the schools came up with a plan of action for the following year. This past year, the focus, and Joanne talked about the critical importance of attendance as a priority for success. And so we really focused our efforts on college readiness during this year in the area of student attendance, and really tried to hone in on improving the staff's understanding of the importance of attendance, working with the parent liaisons on that, and then having parents at the table to help improve attendance at their school. As a part of that work, we gave out many grants, and these were given to schools it was non-competitive. So schools just identified how they would engage families in their attendance work, and they received funds to do that. We worked with the district to support creating a data tracking system, and that was something mentioned earlier, I think, by Sam about the importance of having our families be aware of data of their kids and making that really visible in a way. Our district was really impressed with the New York school that came and shared with us about having a red light, yellow light, and green light system around those criteria for going to college that they share with their parents and work on quarterly. So that was something that we wanted to embed. So we worked on that this year, and that system will be rolling this coming fall. I'd say a highlight of the year was creating a best practices around the whole notion of attendance and tying that into parent engagement and systemic change within the schools. And so we set a competition for our schools and asked them to put together their best practices from this year around attendance and improving attendance in their school, engaging parents in that process, and also looking at moving from random acts to the sustainable systematic strategies. And then we compiled all of those results and gave out awards, had everyone in the district there, had a booklet around the best practices so that they could share with each other what those practices are and learn from that. I wanted to share some of the challenges, or some of the lessons learned and the challenges that we had for our work. And some of the things that we learned was that we could really focus in with families on some key areas. One of those is on attendance, attainment, and achievement, and making that pretty simple with workshops, what they can do at home, because as someone said earlier, they really want to know what it is that they can do. The importance of being involved in the high-level classes from the very beginning, that college is affordable, that to connect your kids to those community resources. And that was a key point, was connecting our community resources to the schools. And we worked a great deal on that, but also making that accessible for our parents. And for parents to be an active part of the college search process. We organized parent-student college visits, and that had a real impact on those individual families, but also within the culture of the schools. Some of the keys of the collaboration that we found in working with the district was really important to frame the work within the largest context and the priority of the district for parent engagement and college readiness. And so this year, the college readiness work moved right into attendance, and so that was the context that was set. Data was invaluable in terms of recognizing what is really going on within our schools, and that was a key part of our recognition awards this last year. What data did you use? How are you looking at attendance? What do you know about the families, and what are the real circumstances that are going on within the families that you're serving to really make a difference in having their child come to school but also succeed in high school and be ready for college. One of the keys was providing space for having families at the table and for staff to work together. We found that the staff really weren't having an opportunity to communicate or share best practices with each other. And for families to be at the table, we set that expectation and worked closely with the parent liaisons and the staff to make sure that we had parents at the Summer Institute, at any planning sessions that they had, at our community convenings with the resource partners from the different community organizations. And that there are many community resources available, and a lot of times the schools are overburdened and they don't have time to make those connections. And so as a separate organization, that was a big part of what we were able to do, was to bring this linkage together between resources available in the community and what could be available in the school, and be the bridge for that to happen. I think a key for the success was the realization of the importance of relationship in any kind of change work, or really trying to work with people to shift and grow their responsibilities and advocacy. And that was done a lot in our case through the inspiration of a staff member on our team, Angela Short, who is our director of college and careers, who was always at the school, always calling parents, always honoring the work that was being done and pushing people to go the next steps. That was a key point there for the work. And then really valuing the efforts that were underway and recognizing each of the groups and the part that they played. I'd like to go back, because we also worked with parent liaisons, and I skipped that. And that was a key part, was for them to shift their perspective and to realize how they could be involved in this work, and that parents really were committed to this and that they could grow that they really needed to reach out to families in multiple ways, that home visits needed to include college readiness information, and that was key for them to work collaboratively with the school staff. They had many of them had worked in isolation, so for them to be on this college readiness team and be involved was a real benefit. It was important for them to work with staff to determine what college readiness information would be helpful to share with families, and then find lots of ways of communicating that. And then lastly, that we really needed to change their job descriptions and some of the performance factors to help bring this college readiness work to the center of their work. So I wanted to close now and see what questions we have that might help focus in the areas that you guys are interested in.
Yeah, you have spurred quite a few questions around the parent liaison, so let's focus there for a few minutes if we can. The first sort of group of questions around the parent liaisons is if they were paid or voluntary positions and how you recruited for them. I think part of that probably would also include what kind of hiring qualifications did they need to have?
And I will say that these were all paid positions. They were paid through Title I, and so they were hired through the district. And I'm not with the district, so I can't tell you how they were hired or what the qualifications were. As an external organization, our goal in working with the parent liaisons was to look at what they needed to do in their positions, and then to provide a certification program that would help them to accomplish that. So last year we worked on marketing strategies. This year's focus was on technology and communications, and those are the two key areas that we worked with them on.
Got it. And so, speaking of the certification program, can you describe more about the certification program? Like, what is the curriculum? How often do they meet, or how do they meet that often? And is this a statewide certification?
No, this was done with the school district and with the Indiana University IUPUI and with our partnership center. And so we worked with the Title I director who oversees the parent liaisons to identify the priorities that they needed for their training and how that fit within the job requirements. And so the first year of their official training program happened a year ago. We then met with the Title I staff, with the parent liaisons this summer, with some of the ones who had been very active to refine and formulate what their training would be this year. This year's professional development was a combination. Every other time they met monthly, so we had access for working with them one day a month. This year, every other session, parents were in attendance. Part of our goal was for them to be able to recruit different parents, to have conversations with parents, to be able to teach parents things that parents needed to understand and be able to do. So we set up sessions so that if one of them was around accessing your students' information, We taught the parent liaisons how to do that in one session, and then the next session we invited parents to come, and then they translated what they had learned to the parents. And then the end result was we had a portfolio of performances that they needed to demonstrate, and then those were placed in a portfolio. Some of those were on the site where we would have demonstrations of understanding. Some of them were in their portfolio and were written documents so that they could be certified at the end of the year.
Right, thank you. So I think we're going to shift over from the parent liaisons to the parents themselves.
Yes.
And could you, in one of your slides, you mentioned that I think 70% of parents knew about services, but far fewer than that were actually using the services. Did you get any data about why that was, and how did you all increase the usage?
That's a great question, and it was actually the students who had said that they were aware of services at their school, and then only 30% of them were using them. But we found the same. We don't have solid data, but we have the words of our parents who participated in the workshops both this summer and throughout the year, that they were not aware of the college readiness resources that were available in the community for their children or for them. And so our main strategy was to get them in connection to those resources. And so we did that both by having the community resources come to the sessions that we would have, the development sessions that we would have that parents came and attended. And then we also worked with the parent liaisons to enroll those organizations in coming to the school and doing workshops at the school to bring that information more directly to our families.
Could you talk a little bit more around how you all engaged families in the attendance efforts?
Sure, and that happened differently at each school.
Okay.
One of the and so I'll give you some examples of that, because we really encouraged them to take new approaches, and so the schools did that in very different ways. We had one school, for example, that what they realized with their data was that a big part was students were getting to school and then they were leaving school, and they weren't so they were missing their classes because they were leaving. So they did an organization with their staff in terms of spaces in the school that they would be in. But they also were outside talking with families, and their principal literally had a bullhorn out saying, "We really need for your child to be here. We really need for them to stay in the classroom. Please support us in that effort." So they had a targeted focus in that way. We had another school that really moved to having, they had already had an advisory format, but they had not looked at that as a way to talk with families about their attendance. And so in advisory, the teachers in advisory became the people responsible for communication with families around attendance. They also then brought, instead of it just being the function of one person, they would bring some of the issues of attendance and family engagement to the community council, where they had families involved in that. We had one school that honored students for their attendance, and had honored families as well for improved attendance, where they would come for lunch. We had some schools took pictures of their kids who had improved attendance, and those were given to the families. We had family orientations where the parents where the school talked with the families about the 3 A's, and the families learned about that. We had one school that parents and staff worked together to create a college compact that would really focus on attendance. That then they worked with their students and families to carry out. We had parents involved in our college corners at each of our parent centers. The parent liaison put together kind of a college corner at their school, and so some of the parents would help with that. They would do calls home to other parents when kids would be absent, to also let parents know about some of the workshops that were going to be taking place. Those are some of the ways that they got involved with attendance.
Yeah, quite a variety of strategies. That sounds great. And And can you clarify for me, the Pathways teams, parents were on those?
Yes.
Yes.
And that was an option that the district required, and this would be something for our district folks who are listening. The requirement for the Pathway teams was that they need to have their principal, their counselor, and their parent liaison on their college Pathway teams. We strongly encourage them to have parents on their Pathway teams. So some did, and some do, and some do not. Mm-hmm. So that's a school choice in terms of if there's a parent on that team.
And so if school districts do elect or schools elect to have them on their teams, is there any kind of particular training that parents go through to sort of catch them up to speed and help them feel comfortable on that team?
I think that would be a great idea, and I don't know if that's happening. Through separate work that we do with parents and academies, we do a lot of training with them about serving on teams at their school and being able to understand the school-wide plan and things that they're doing, but I don't know if that took place on the Pathway teams in this case.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Well, and we are at our time. I want to thank all three of our presenters for really wonderful slides and presentations and just a huge volume of information that I hope will be helpful to everyone who's participated.